For those who don't know, my name is Matt MacLeod. I'm John MacLeod's son. I'm unfortunately a lawyer, and I'm a trial attorney, so I speak for a living. That's kind of what I do. I make arguments, I go to court, ultimately even have trials. And it's different, it's stressful enough when you're talking about some arcane legal theory or even have someone's life potentially in your hands. It's a little bit different when you're talking about your father. You want to make sure you hit that right tone. You want to paint the appropriate picture of your father. And it's not because I love my father, which of course I do. It's because he loved me. And that's the most powerful force that you can have in this world is when someone loves you. You want to do right by that person. You want to run through a wall. I'm always moved by a quote in the Alzheimer's world that we remember their love when they can't. And that's what I'm going to do tonight when I honor my father. My dad, is known as a professional basketball coach. People in town know him as the former coach of the Suns. He's got over 700 professional wins. He was part of potentially the greatest game of all time, that being the 1976 NBA Finals Game 5, triple overtime against the Celtics. But that's just a sliver of what defined him. What really defined him was his class and his integrity. That was his legacy. It's a complete honor for my sister, my mom, and I to go out into the community, and weekly, without fail, people come up to us and say, man, we loved your dad. He always had such class. He always had such integrity. They also say he was the best damn dresser they'd ever seen, but mostly class and integrity. And you spend 20 minutes with my dad, you would have thought you knew him for 20 years because he takes an interest in you as a person. He asks you questions about you. He asks you questions about your life, and it's not pretense, it's not placating, it's genuine, it's sincere. He takes ownership in the person. You know, my dad grew up in New Albany, Indiana, a small town in southern Indiana on the border of Indiana and Kentucky in 1937. Now, I spent 9 years in Indiana. I'm a proud former Hoosier. I don't know if anyone in the crowd is a Hoosier. But 1937, southern Indiana. Could have gone a different way for my dad and how he viewed people and viewed their rights. But he grew up in the projects. His family was on welfare. They were on food stamps. He grew up in the projects with poor white kids and poor black kids. And that shaped him. He looked at everyone at every time as the same. That's exactly what he did. He taught that to us. He instilled that to us. And he treated everyone the same. No matter who you were, you got that same level of respect from my father. Story I like to tell, when my father was coaching the Knicks in 1990, he had a one-year deal, one-year contract. And so my family stayed behind in Dallas because we didn't know if it would be extended. And so my dad lived in a hotel in Westchester, New York. And when it was evident that he wasn't going to be renewed as the Knicks coach, everybody in that hotel, waitstaff, maids, concierge, bellhops, night watchmen, security, lined up to shake his hand and say thank you. It was a pleasure to know you. That doesn't happen unless you treat people with class and dignity. And that's my dad's true legacy. Now, my particular favorite story from that time is when his Italian-American limo drivers offered to break management's legs for not bringing him back. And I say that half kidding, but again, it shows how he could vacillate between groups and how people gravitated to him. And that's a true testament to my father. My father obviously was a coach, and I think the way he treated people translated into his coaching style. He always treated the player with respect. It was always about getting the player better and helping the player along the way, whether it was after practice or before practice, helping that player reach his potential. Ultimately, my dad was a teacher. He got his master's in education and in history, so he was a teacher by nature, and he always extended that to his players. He wanted to make sure they were taken care of and that they were put at the forefront. Now, granted, if that helped them win games and helped the team be successful, that was great. But the true thing was getting that player to rise to the best of his ability. You saw that vignette from Walter Davis about how my dad would call him up during hard times and say, hey, Walter, come over for breakfast. Carol's cooking. Can you guys imagine LeBron on his 10-speed heading down the bridle path to his coach's house for breakfast? Now, maybe that was 1980s Phoenix. Maybe that was a small town at the time. But I think it's more a testament to my father and how he took an interest and a joy in helping his players. As a father, my dad was difficult to even explain the impact he had on me growing up. We spent so much time together with my dad. Even though he was on the road at certain times, he always felt like he was there. And obviously, every seminal moment in my young childhood, he was there. Birthdays, Christmas, anything I can remember, he was there. Now, granted, he probably wasn't at some time, but his vibrance always filled the room. His personality filled the room. And it was just remarkable to be able to be with him. Going back to his coaching career, and this kind of intertwines with the family, coaching can be a brutal profession, and it is something that vendettas and feuds and wars with the press are often commonplace, and you hear about it on the sports page, you hear about it in the news. And my dad never let that get to him. He was a dogged competitor, as competitor as I'd ever seen, but he didn't allow the stuff that came along with it to get him down. And he had reason to. He had huge disappointments in his professional career. He lost a world championship literally because of a crooked referee, but he didn't, thank you, but he didn't wallow. He didn't let it get him down. He rallied, never held a grudge. Now, my sister and my mother and I, it's a different story. We may or may not have warrants out for our arrest in mid-America, but the statute of limitations has not yet passed on one of us. Kathleen, you know what I'm talking about. So I'm not going to get into that. But he always rose above it. He was always the bigger man. And we'd always get my dad to try to get him to talk poorly about a certain player that, of course, nobody liked, or a certain coach that no one liked. And he would never, ever do it. He always rose above. He always would say, maybe, he's a little bit strange, and that was it. And that was my father. And he always woke up the next day, and what a role model for me as a young man. He always woke up the next day ready to go, ready to attack the next day, motivated, inspired. And even though he's been fighting Alzheimer's now for almost 10 years, every morning he wakes up, he still is optimistic, he still smiles, he still laughs. So that's an ultimate gift of grace that my family is able to receive from my dad on a daily basis. He still has his spirit. No matter that his body's betrayed him and his mind has betrayed him, he still has his spirit. Like I said before, my father was always there in my young childhood, always there. We spent hundreds and hundreds of hours together, whether it's shooting baskets, my sister and I and my dad, my mom, on vacations, playing baseball, in the pool, having fun. We had so much fun growing up, and for me, as a young boy, to be with my dad, to be able to go on road trips, to be able to hang with him at the arena, to be able to see the things that a young boy would kill to have, really brought me closer to my father. I was able to see things and to be with my father in certain locations at certain times that was an absolute thrill for me. And as I got older, just think about how a coach can be a father, and how lucky I was to have a father as a coach, and what kind of motivator I had in my ear every day. My dad was always supportive. He motivated me. He inspired me. He was with me every step of the way. Every step of the way. And he would wake me up in the mornings with certain axioms that he would try to get me inspired with. He would say, no one ever drowned in sweat. And the harder you work, the luckier you get. And any old nag can start, but it takes a thoroughbred to finish. And those are the things that he inspired me with. And, we were able to have a relationship that I think is really second to none, father and son. One thing I always cherish is that when he was a coach of the Suns, when security wasn't as tight as it is now, I would go sneak down to the locker room between halves, and he'd always come out with a sun-kissed or an orange crush for me. And I can still taste that orange crush. I can still taste that sun-kissed. I still have that powerful sense memory of my dad's cologne as he walked by, and of the taste of that orange drink. And even though I don't drink it very often, every now and then, I'll go to the store and get a sun-kiss or an orange crush, and I'll think of my dad. As I got older, it was in my teenage years, I had some adversity in my life. I had some adversity when I was in high school and college and even law school. And my dad was always there for me. He'd write me letters, even though we lived in the same town for the majority of our lives. He'd write me letters of encouragement, things that I should do, things that I could do. And we spent so much time together over coffee, restaurants. We spent hundreds and hundreds of hours playing golf, and he was my confidant. And I leaned on him, and he told me what to do and how I should handle a situation. And even though most of it I took and ran with it, there were other parts where I said, well, Dad, this isn't 1950 or 1960 anymore. That can't be the way you do it. Of course, he was right, all of it. But we had this connection, the two of us, and I had this memory of going over to the house on Sunday when I was in college and in law school, and watching golf together and laughing and watching basketball together and going to games and talking to him on the phone about the games and just having this connection with him. And at this point, I regret it because I thought it would last forever, and unfortunately it didn't. But we had such a special relationship, and he was my confidant, and I could share anything with him, and he was always there to protect me day after day, by my side. No matter what happened, he was there. My father is the kind of guy that would give his shirt off his back to you, and he instilled those lessons in me. And I had him for 30 years, and he's still with us, but he's not. And it's something that I struggle with. People would kill for those 30 years. People would kill for that relationship that we had, and people lose their loved ones at times throughout their lives that are unfair. But this is my context, and I miss my dad. And he was at my wedding, but he wasn't. And he was there when my grandkids, or my children were born, his grandkids were born, but he wasn't. And he's never gonna get to know his grandkids. And his grandkids get to see him at least once a week. Every Sunday night we go to my mom's, and we see him, and he's in a wheelchair. And every now and then they get a whistle or a smile from Pop-Pop. But they're never gonna get to know him like we did. And we'll do our best to keep his spirit alive and to tell them the stories about what their Pop-Pop did. But they're not gonna experience the joy of interaction with him. They're never gonna be able to experience the love that my sister and my mom and I did. And twofold, my father's never gonna get to see them. He's never gonna get to see them hit a home run in t-ball or score a goal in soccer or whatever it may be, and not gonna have that laugh like we used to. I mean, that kills me. But we forge on, and we do the best under the situation. And I would be remiss at this point if I didn't thank the one person in my family who has kept us together the past 10 years, and that's my mom, Carol, who's here tonight. The caregivers are the real heroes. They are the inspiration. My mom and my dad had plans when my dad retired from coaching. He was finally off the road. They were going to start traveling, doing the things that they always wanted to do. My dad got sick. My mom never wavered. She attacked his treatment and his care with vigor, with selflessness, with devotion. She really is a saint. She is an angel here on earth. So thank you, Mom. And God love her, my sister and I are here in town as well, but she wouldn't let us help to some extent because she wanted to keep us safe from having to see our father in certain situations. She knew how hard it was for kids to see their parents suffer, to see them deteriorate, and she took that laboring oar, and she is truly the toughest person I have ever met. I love her with my entire heart, and she is the hero of our family. And I know there's a lot of us out there that have people in their lives like my mom who step in and do the work and care for the loved ones without question, all the time, with great care and compassion. And that should be commended. Mom, you truly are the best. But my mom couldn't do it. My mom was 70 years old when my dad, who was 70 at the time, first was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She is now 81. She has cared for him for the past 11 years. But about 7 years ago, after trying to do it with a Herculean effort, nonstop, 24/7, she woke up in the middle of the night with her heart beating through her chest. And that has since, thank God, subsided. But it was a wake-up call to her that you can't do it alone. Physically, you may be able to, okay? You may be able to do it, but emotionally, it's going to catch up with you. And then the emotional leads to the physical. You cannot do it alone. There is help out there. It's okay to reach out for help. And thank God, we have a team of people around the clock at our house to help. 24/7. We're very fortunate. We have long-term disability. My family has the funds to pay for caregivers. We have Andy, we have Brenda, we have Tanya, we have Lisa, we have Brian. We have a group of people who are now our family who come in and take care of my dad. And of course, my mom is obviously always overseeing, and that never wavers. But you can't do it alone. And there are ways to combat this disease. And it's difficult. It's difficult to make that call. It's difficult to acknowledge that your loved one has Alzheimer's. And I can tell you, for everyone in this room, every reaction you have to it is normal because you're dealing with the abnormal. Every patient is different. Every symptomology is different. Every day is different. It is up and down. It's not point A to point B like a cancer treatment or point A to point B like a cardiovascular treatment. This doesn't have a playbook. But you need to stay unified. You need to keep your family together if you can to combat it. That's the only way we're going to be able to get through this. And the only way we're going to be able to cure this is with class and dignity and integrity like my father. That's the only way we're going to do it, and we're going to do it. Moreover, we have to do it. My father's greatest fear was getting Alzheimer's or dementia because his parents had it. I don't want another generation to live their entire life in fear that one day they're going to get the news that they had Alzheimer's. We can overcome this. And I know we've got a black tie affair tonight, but Gala committee, get ready because every year we're coming back. Eventually we're going to have a white tie affair because white in the Alzheimer's world symbolizes the first cure, the first survivor. And we're going to get there. Thank you very much.